tours to either new students or people out in the community that are coming in. So we want you guys to know like the history of Douglas before you guys came here. So I have a very close family friend, Lloyd, who came here to Douglas, and he's going to share some of his experiences and what the school was like when he came. And you guys feel free to ask questions. Okay. The floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Good morning, or good afternoon now. My name is Arthur Lloyd. I attended this school from 58 until 63. I graduated in 1963. The history of the school, I was telling Ms. Robinson upstairs a few minutes ago. Early in the county, well, let's go back a bit. We're all aware that we had a segregated system here during my time. Black had their space, whites had their space. Never should separation. Okay, the old system, the old Southern system. The first school for blacks was up on Union Street behind the old school board offices, a white frame building. It was called the Loudon Training School, I believe. That was for black students. They didn't educate black students that day in time. You trained them. I don't know if you can catch my drift on that. You weren't worthy of an education, but we'll train you to do this, that, and the other. Okay? So eventually, the parents of the black students petitioned the school board to see if they could get a new school built. And the school board would always say, well, we don't have money for that, or whatever. So parents got together, raised money, and purchased the land that this building is situated on there. I think it's about 6 acres here. They went to the school board and said, we do have the land, can you build us a building now? And the deal was, you give us the land, we'll build you a building. So after, I don't know what they paid for it originally, but they deeded it to the school board for $1. The school board took it for $1. Okay, we'll put up a building. So the first building the building was built. And that is the front part of the building. When you walk in where the office is now, and it's been partitioned off, that was the big room you'd walk into. It was a gymnasium, it was an auditorium, and 4 classrooms. Okay, that's what they started with in the late 40s.
So did you guys get that? Like upstairs in that hallway, in the foyer, that was the square. That was the school. All this back here wasn't.
Where the wood is?
Yeah. Where the front foyer is. The front office. Miss Fonte's class, Mr. Wright's class, and Miss Mello's class. That was pretty much the school.
Where the office is today, that is pretty much where the office was then, when I was here. Over on the side, the library was across the way. Ms. Houghton's, I'm trying to think now.
So Ms. Fonte's class was the library?
Yeah, there was a library on, when you come in to the right, office on the left to the right, the corner room was a math teacher, Ms. Houghton. The next room was the library. And I can't remember the lady's name, a real tall lady. She was very strict. you didn't mark up her books, you know, and you better get them back on time. And over on the left, in the corner, was classroom. I had homeroom in there. Can't remember the teacher's name.
So that's where Mr. Wright's room is that he's talking about.
Yeah, next to that was the office, and the guidance counselors had the office. And then you had the stage. And we were crowded. We held classes on the stage. They had portable chalkboards set up, chairs, and I had a couple of classes up there.
So sorry to interrupt. The stage he's referring to is where the GED is now. So where it's enclosed, Mr. T's room, those walls weren't there, and that was the stage.
Right. And like I said, we played basketball. All the basketball games were played in the room. The basketball goal on the side where the library is. You had one over about where the office is. Chairs around the wall. You pack people in. Guys playing ball would go up and jam the ball, and into the wall they would go. They didn't have padding. Just you and a tough shoulder. But everything was done.
Students, if you're interested in getting information about the Army, there is an Army recruiter in the conference room during lunch today, so it's during lunch only. Go to the conference room right now if you're interested in information about the Army. Thank you.
Like I said, that was a multi-purpose room. The stage was there for whatever plays, whatever we had, movies were shown there. Like I said, all the basketball was played in that room. Football field was out here on the right. And, you know, it was kind of rough, rocks and stones and boulders, and you took your life in your hands to play ball. And in the back where the playground is now, that was just a swampy area. It was nothing back there but muck. It was bushes and nothing. And they cleared it all out and put the playground back there, the pavilion, and that's where everybody has that. You have your picnics back there now. It's real nice. You have any questions?
How many students, do you remember about how many students there were?
I'm trying to think. When I graduated in '63, my graduating class was somewhere around, I would say 45. I can't remember the exact number, 45 to 50 people, small class. But you must remember, during that time, we only had 2 high schools in the entire county. You had Loudoun County High for whites, you had this school for blacks. Every student in the school, you'd be bused to this school, okay? And all the students, white students, would be bused to Loudoun County High. Just 2 schools for the whole county. Now, we have what now? Three brand new high schools plus this one. If you count this, we got what, 4 high schools in Leesburg.
Oh, Leesburg, yeah, it's the same.
So, you know, we've gone from 2 serving the whole county until 4 serving just the Leesburg area. And there's so many now, go out on these roads now, out to Ashford or wherever, everywhere you look is a new school. So, I don't know what total, how many schools we have altogether now. I have no idea.
90.
90 something, I would imagine, yeah, if you total all elementary, middle school, and high school. And that's another thing, when I came along, we didn't have the middle schools. We would go to elementary school 1 through 7, and you go to high school 8 through 12. So I left elementary school, came to high school. You know.
Was it Banneker? What elementary school was it?
Banneker, I attended Banneker.
Out west.
And that's another thing. When I started school in 1950, when I started Banneker in 1950, Banneker was a school that was built in the 40s. It was a brick modern building. Banneker and Carver, 2 black schools, okay? But the county was also still operating, I guess, 1-room schools, 2-room schools, so little frame buildings out in each community that they heated with wood stoves, and they didn't have plumbing. We still had those. When I was in 5th grade at Banneker, they consolidated all the elementary, Willisville Elementary, brought all those students into Banneker. So we, you know, that expanded. We absorbed them and we all got along, no fighting, you know, no rivalry. But we've come a long way.
So how big of a deal was it for blacks to get a high school education in that time period?
The school was here, and I think it depended a lot on your family. If your family valued education, you were sent to school, you were expected to go to school, do well, graduate. Some kids didn't, and I think poverty played a lot in that. Poverty, being poor, will either make you or break you. That's a fact. You'll come up out of it strong, or you'll go down weak. And there was a lot of poverty in the county. Substandard housing, people living out on farms in tenant houses, the dad making $50 a month. I have a friend who talks about his life. I didn't realize it at the time, the struggle he was having, until we became grown men, and we talked. And he explained his father made very little money because he used to always tell me, he said, I had a cousin named Albert Smith. And they had the bond thing, then you save, I think, a quarter a week or whatever. He had a little booklet, you stick a quarter in. When you get $18, you turn it in and hold it, and then it eventually it turned into $25 savings bond or whatever. But my cousin, he was into that. And Eugene told me, he said, I don't know where he got all those quarters to put in that little thing, you know. He said, I didn't have any quarters. You know, and that was his plight in life. He didn't have it. And when we got to Douglas, Eugene dropped out in the 9th grade to go to work because he felt it necessary to help himself and help his family. He had to quit school to go to work. And when I was at Banneker, there were kids that dropped out of Banneker Elementary School and went over to the training center to walk racehorses, to walking hots, we call it. You know, they get out there and run the horse, and then, here, boy, walk this horse and cool it off. These kids would leave Banneker. They dropped out of school and took jobs walking hots at the training track. And eventually they spent their whole lives in the racehorse business, going here and there and all over, riding in a van with horses, you know. And some of those guys, they're still around. I'm not knocking working with racehorses, it's a job. But they quit elementary school to take that job because of the dire circumstances of the family. So, hey, you guys in here today, you living the life. You got it made. You just don't know, you know. Yes.
In 1954, the Supreme Court said that in all due time it was illegal to segregate schools, and in all due time that had to change. You graduated, you said, in 1961?
63, yeah.
Did it feel like? Did you think that something was going to happen, or did you think nothing?
You know, at the time I was a student. I was in my own world. This was my world. I was within the black world.
Right.
I didn't think about that. I never attended school with a white person. Never. And I was talking to a white guy, a friend of mine, who lives up West Virginia. We talked about it. And I said, Larry, I said, the regret I have growing up, I never knew anybody white as a friend that I could talk to express to them how I felt or listen to how they felt. You know, it's just like you and I talking. I missed that. That's my regret. I never had that exchange. I grew up totally segregated. I don't have I'm not mad about it. It's the way it was.
Yeah.
And that's a part of history. You just have to take it as it is. You can't change history. You shouldn't change it. You shouldn't try to change it. You just deal with that and move forward. Did you attend out? Were you?
No, I went to Fairfax High School, but I graduated in '82. So.
Oh man, you're a modern guy. You're a young dude.
Yeah. One thing you said that I thought might resonate for some of these kids. You said some of the kids dropped out of elementary school and they went over to walk hots.
That's right.
And someone said to them, "Boy, take this horse."
Yeah.
If you were to say that today,
no, that wouldn't fly today.
It would be fighting words.
You wouldn't fly today.
What was it like to have to deal with that kind of talk?
That was common to the time. Occasionally you would hear the N-word. Common to the time. You've got to remember, we're in Loudoun County. Loudoun County is part of Virginia, and Virginia was part of the South.
Yeah. So,
and now I always tell people, we weren't Mississippi or Alabama, but we were part of the South. You know, for what it's worth. Yeah. Yes.
Were people resentful for that?
Resentful?
Yeah, I mean, was there fury about it?
People talked about it, but okay, for example, if I'm the man and I have total control over you, you can gripe all you want, but what are you going to do about it? You understand what I'm saying? And that was the situation. It was like when you're under a system where you're being controlled, you yell, scream, fight, kick, and maybe there will, like the civil rights movement and all that, Martin Luther King, the marching, it didn't happen overnight, it took time. It was a slow process. But as far as being resentful, no, I don't feel resentful. You know, I'm sitting here looking at you and conversing with you, and I'm, you know, you're a nice lady. Hey, you're fine with me.
Right, I'm just thinking maybe, you know, your father being angry about you being called a boy, you know, boy,
Well,
being
that
a
was,
dress boy.
well, hell, my father was called boy.
Yeah.
My grandfather was called boy. You know, it was just a boy, girl, uncle, and aunt. I tell you what really to hear people call my grandmother aunt. You know, you go, they say, hey, Aunt so-and-so. It was a term used for black ladies. Now, my grandmother was in her 80s, an old gray-headed woman. No respect. Now, I might have had a little rage in there about that, but what did I do about it? I kept my mouth shut. What are you going to say? See? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a favorite memory of your time that you spent here at Douglas?
Oh, God. The friends
Yeah.
the friends I made and some of the teachers I had, I fondly remember them. But today, I have friends I made in Banneker. We came through Douglas together. We left here, we attended Virginia State College together. And we're still together. You see, it's meaningful. The friendships you make, that's it. The friends you make in life, the ones that stick, it's very important. Next to family, that's the most important. First of all, family is important, and then your circle of friends. But I have some very dear friends that I made along the way. Yeah.
Did you ever find that you thought of leaving and quitting school?
No,
No?
no. I
Committed?
never thought of quitting.
Did you have brothers or sisters that came here with you, or?
There were 4 in my family. I have a brother and 2 sisters. The sister next to me graduated from Douglas. Then I have a younger brother and sister. Brother started Douglas, finished at Valley.
Oh, okay.
And my baby sister attended Valley totally. She was old.
I was in the 70s.
Yeah, she's much younger than me.
Can you touch on, like, so one of your siblings that started here and went to Valley, like, what happened during that time for that to happen? Like, resegregation?
My brother was here in the late 60s. And I think this school closed in 68. That's when they did the complete switch over the integration. And he was here, so when it switched, he left here and went to Valley. So he was caught in the, you know, he was in the change. But he started here, and when they closed the school, then he finished up at Valley. Yeah.
Do you remember what that was like for him?
He said he was fine. He loved it. I mean, he had friends. I mean, you know, he made friends. Like I said, I never had a white friend. He was a few years younger than I am. He had a couple in the neighborhood. He befriended a couple of white guys and they played basketball. You know, he had a different circle of friends than I did. So, you know, he went to school with his friends and he played football in Valley. I think he bench warmed a lot. He sat on the bench a lot, but he was on the team. But he did okay. And my sister did. She attended. She did okay. There was no, as far as I know, no problems. You know, no out and out hostility. You know,
So do you know when the school closed down in like 68, did some of the black teachers go and teach at Valley or County or?
You know, I'm not
what
sure how.
teachers?
I think some of them probably were, you know, employed in the other school. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I don't know about.
And I
the
guess a
time.
lot of them just packed up and left.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Just depends.
Thanks for your service. We'll see you later. I mean, no, it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, one of the black teachers our students may not know at the time, they were very highly educated. much more so than many of the white teachers. And people are surprised to learn that that was the truth. A lot of black teachers had masters and doctorates that the white teachers didn't have. So,
Little known fact.
yeah.
Thank
Black
you for
students
bringing
got
that
a
up.
really good education.
Yeah.
What are the questions you guys have? Questions?
Ask me something. Just say it. Yes,
So
ma'am.
I was upstairs looking for another student, so maybe I missed it, maybe you already touched base on that, but what was daily life like here? What was discipline like?
Like
You know,
your
what kind
routine?
of consequences were
Oh,
applied? Can you talk,
there was
elaborate on homework a
there-
little bit?
there was this one. Mr. Sidnall was principal, and you didn't want to be sent up to Mr. Sidnall's office. I mean, he was a disciplinarian. I mean, the guy didn't take no stuff. If I'm saying it.
Are you speaking from experience?
No. Maybe I was just I never got in trouble. I don't know. I flowed through pretty easy. Got along with everybody, students and teachers. And but those who did step out of line and had to go see Sidnall, I think they regretted that.
What was the discipline, or what the teachers?
Well, students, you could be expelled. Some students were expelled. I don't know what they did, but it was it was a thing. You could be thrown out, as you can be today, I think. And another thing that amuses me when I think about it is the age disparity in students. Okay, when we consolidated, when the schools were consolidated over on that end, when Aldi and Willisville students came into Banneker, we didn't realize at the time some of those students were 3 or 4 years older than we were. Okay, and we didn't realize that we were still, we were all in class together. And it was kind of funny. I tell this tale. I was at a funeral. A fellow passed away that I attended school with. And I went to the funeral. And I'm sitting there, and I opened the program, and I started reading. And this guy, he and I were together at Banneker, same class. And when I read the program, the guy is 6 years older than I am. I said, wait a minute, it can't be. That's a fact. I didn't know it. But then again, when we got over here to Douglas, he would come to school in the fall, sign up to play football. As soon as football season was over, he would leave. The next school year, he'd be right back. Sign up, play football, bye-bye. Until they caught on to it and say, hey, you can't do that, But all kinds of games were played, But when I sat at that funeral service and read his funeral program, and the guy was 6 years old, and I said, wait a minute, this can't be right. I had no idea. But he was that much older, but he was still in elementary school. So, the old tale, the old men still in school, they were there. But I don't think you had that problem today. I don't think anybody in here is 6 years older than the guy sitting next to you. You guys are a happy bunch. Everybody's got a smile on their face.
I know. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like to live in Loudoun County during segregation, for your community and?
Well, let's say Loudoun then and Loudoun now. When I think about it then, it's like, let's say you had 2 photograph albums on the table up here, 2 big, thick books. You open one, it's all black and white. Okay? That's the Loudoun the way it used to be. It was all black and white. There were no other groups here that I can remember. I cannot remember any Chinese. I cannot remember any Hispanics. I cannot remember any Indians from India. No groups other than black people and white people. and you stay in your lane, okay? That's the old out. That's the old out. You come over to the next book and you open it and it's in multicolor. It's a beautiful book. You know, we're all here, we're together, we get along, we're happy. And that's the way it should be. I went down to the opening of the new Douglas Elementary. And I go in to sit down, and I'm sitting there and they start bringing, this kids start coming in and filing in, going up, taking their seats on the bleachers. And then all of a sudden you look up there and you say, my God, look at that. You got everybody here. I don't know where they're from, but they're here. This is the new Loudon. You know, this is the, oh, I go to 4th of July fireworks over here. I go over here on the bypass. You sit on the bank and watch the fireworks. And you look at the grouping of people there. It's the new Loudon. And we're all here together. Why didn't somebody tell them that back in the 50s and 60s that we could get along?
Yeah.
And you know, we're not going to throw rocks at each other. We're going to get along.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, between the students that went to county and here, obviously we all know separate and equal was not
No.
equal. Was there anything over at county that you guys wished you had here?
Well, the
Better
truth is,
anything?
me personally, I had no idea
What they had?
what they had.
Yeah, that's true.
My son, I'm going to tell you, my son finished Loudoun County in the 90s. Me personally, I've never set foot in Loudoun County High School. I went to the graduation on the front lawn. That's as close as I've been. No, and it's I don't know if it's, you know, I just had no interest. But yeah, they had, we had a lot of what they call hand-me-downs. All of our books were old and locked up and dirty. And I understand they had new textbooks for what it's worth. You know, when you finish with it, send it all down there. It's good enough for them, you know.
So I grew up in Germany.
Okay.
And I grew up with East and West Germany. And when the wall fell, I was like, this is not happening. I'm dreaming. I have to pinch myself.
Right, right.
What do you think your parents and your parents' generations would say if they would see Loudon today?
It'd be a shock to some people, I think, to see where we are now as compared to where we were. Education statewide has changed. For example, on my mother's side, my grandfather and my grandmother, my mother's mother and father, never attended school a day in their life. My grandfather couldn't read and write. He was born in 1863 in the middle of the Civil War. He became of age in the 1870s doing Reconstruction. There were no schools for him. My grandmother was born in 1874. She became of age, I guess, in the 1880s. No school for her. Okay. They married, had 10 kids. My mother, my Aunt Helen were the two youngest. They went as far as 7th grade over in Fauquier County, our neighboring county. They went as far as 7th grade because that's all that was available for them at the time. As far as you could go was 7th grade in school. For blacks, I don't know about whites. It's possibly the same for whites, I'm not sure. Then I came along and I had an opportunity to go a little further. But from my grandparents not having an opportunity for an education, to my mother and father who finished 7th grade, you know, to me, to my son, to my granddaughter, as a family, we sort of progressed. We have progressed educationally. You know. So I can understand when the wall came down. How did the people seem from the other side of the wall?
Oh, they felt very liberated.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
But did they feel deprived? Did they feel?
No, and it was not over generations. It was a sudden
Sudden,
event. So,
yeah.
but they kind of knew what was going on outside of their country,
Right,
even so they were not supposed to.
yeah,
So it was they were very excited.
right.
But it was for us growing up in the West, it was just something that would never ever happen,
Yeah, yeah,
and it did.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So things can change over generations,
Oh, yeah,
or on the
yeah.
turn of a dime.
Yeah.
Do we have questions?
Don't you want to know nothing?
Homework.
You don't want to know nothing?
Homework.
Home. Homework? Oh, I'm sorry. What's your name, young man?
Nick,
Hi, Nick. How you doing?
good. In your mind, how, like, what is the importance, and, oh my bad, I can't speak right now. What is the importance of education to you when it comes to, like, young African American males and females in today's society?
Opening your mind, okay? You can be caught in a little narrow space and adapt to that space and be oblivious to what's going on around you. So what I say to you is you have 2 eyes, you have 2 ears, and you have a good brain, right? Think. Be observant. Watch, listen, and think. And I've been sitting up here talking all morning. Don't take everything I said for, you know what I mean? Scrutinize me. Think about what I've said to you. And then, you know, you might sit there and say, I don't, guy doesn't know what he's talking. What the hell is he talking about? You know? But what I'm saying is think, think, think. Open your mind and think. And don't believe everything you hear. What you hear, scrutinize it, analyze it, and think for yourself. Open your head. This is the most valuable thing you got is your brain. Does that answer? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And learn. And when you come to school every day, try to learn as much as possible. You know. For example, I finished here in 1963. Wonderful time, circle of friends. I applied to Virginia State College and I was accepted. I went down to Petersburg and it was a whole new world to me because all of a sudden I'm surrounded by students from everywhere. Being here, I was surrounded with the local group. There, I had people from North Carolina, South Carolina, New Jersey, New York. And you get to know these people and you talk to them and you find out what they're thinking and they find out what you, it broadens you. You begin to think. It broadens your thought. And that's the best thing. Get out in the world and expand your thought. You know, expand your thinking. Use your thinking cap.
Sure.
Everything you hear on TV, everything you read on the computer, scrutinize it. Because there are people that'll feed you a bill of baloney, you know what I mean? They'll put it to you, they'll tell you this, that, and the other, and it's not necessarily so. So it's up to you to be able to analyze it, pick it apart.
Other questions? Can we get to my homework then?
And another thing, you got, like I said, the lunch is prepared, but you had service today. You guys had your lunch brought down to you. You're real special, you know? Back in the day, we had the brown bag. Well, we had a cafeteria too, but a lot of days I brown bagged it. That bologna sandwich tasted mighty good, you know?
So, talking about the homework, I have a 92-year-old friend
Yeah,
who grew up in East Prussia, which is today Poland,
okay.
and she just talked about her time in school, and it was definitely a lot different than nowadays school. But she said she had oftentimes they had to learn 2 different languages, and oftentimes they had to learn from one day to the next, like 60 vocabulary words.
Yeah.
They were hours and hours busy after school, and it was very strict. Did you experience that high expectation and
We were expected to do well. But like I said, it basically depended on the parents. My parents were not super strict on hit the books and stay in the books and do this. But they expected us to stay in school and to try to do well. You know? And the teachers expected you to do well. And, but there was no rulers across the knuckles if you didn't, you know. No torture. Yeah. Like
The
I have,
teachers, was corporal punishment?
well, I have some
David?
friends who attended different schools, and they were said that the well, I had a friend that used to tell me that, and I'm not knocking in a particular group, but this person told me that the nuns like to whack the knuckles. You know, I don't know. They said that they whack, 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 you know, but I never experienced that. But they said they did. Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? We appreciate you coming in. Oh,
Yes, sir. I got it. Hit me, man. Hit me.
So what made you keep going to do something to succeed?
I didn't quite hear that now.
What made you keep going?
What made you keep going and want to succeed?
What made me keep going to school?
Yeah, and
I enjoyed
Want to
it.
do well.
I enjoyed it. I had friends. And like I said, my parents encouraged me. They, you know, they weren't super disciplinary, like push, 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 but they were encouraging. And I think it was due to the fact of the limited experience they had in school. They expected more of us, my brother, my sister, and I, my two sisters, and I think that's what it was. But I enjoyed school. And it's fun being here with you. And I'll tell you this, my Aunt Helen, my mother's youngest sister, she passed away in the early 90s. But I guess she was getting along in her 80s. And she lived over in D.C. After my uncle died, she was alone by herself. So we said, Aunt Helen said, get out and go up to the senior citizens place. You know, get on the little bus and ride up to the senior, get involved with the senior citizens. You'd enjoy that. And she said, no, I don't want to be with those old people. I want to hang with the young crowd. And that's where I feel this morning. I'm hanging with the young crowd. And this is it. I like this. This is good. I enjoy being here with you guys. And I hope you enjoy the experience here.
Oh, we have that.
Yep.
What was there around here, like the buildings? Like what?
What was around here?
Yeah.
You might not believe this, but when you would come out of Leesburg and you get to Douglas High School, when you pass Douglas High School, you were in the country. From this point eastward was farmland, just fields. Wasn't nothing out here. This was the last, Douglas, when I was here, Douglas was the last building on Route 7 going out of town heading east. This was it.
Going towards Sterling.
Going towards Sterling. When you got to this building past it, you were in cow territory. You were in farmland. Across the street was over here, whatever, the old airport, Leesburg Airport, used to be in this field across the street. They used to land little planes before they built the airport out on Sickler Road. This was the old airport where Walmart and all that stuff, you know, that was the landing strip right across there. But this was country, man. This was out of town. This was the edge of town. And I think that's why probably when the land was bought, when the parents were able to get enough money to buy this land in sometime in the 40s, it was because it was on the edge of town. They probably got a good deal on it. They probably, I don't know what they paid for it, but they probably got a good deal buying it because it was outside. It was a city. It was on the perimeter of town. You see, it was nothing. Past here going east was nothing.
Was there like a road?
There was no Jiffy Lube or Popeye's chicken on the back on the corner.
Was Route 7 here?
Huh?
Was Route 7 there?
Route 7 was here. 2-lane highway. A single lane. You know. Route 7. When I first came back to Leesburg, I guess in the late '60s, Route 7 was still just a single, two-way traffic. single road, two-way traffic. And they had started converting it into a four-lane highway. They were building a four-lane highway. And early on, I remember when they built Dulles Airport. Dulles Airport was non-existent. And no one could understand why they were going to put an airport out in the middle of nowhere. But it seemed like it worked out pretty good, you know, the master plan. You look at all the building that's going on out there now. When I first came back here in the late 60s, you probably won't believe this. I never had a slice of pizza until I was a grown man and had come back home to Leesburg. And out of the Virginia Village Shopping Center, there was a little shop in there that started making pizzas. That was the only place you could buy a pizza in Leesburg. And that's where I had my first slice of pizza, the experience of pizza experience. And he said, a grown man, he's never had pizza. Never had pizza, you know. But I remember when Tasty Freeze came to town, McDonald's was down in Fairfax. And we had a Tasty Freeze. In Percival, we had a Tasty Freeze here in Leesburg. And that was about it. Catoctin Circle, when you go here at the light and make your left, you go around. Catoctin Circle was non-existent, it wasn't there. Because when, another experience I'll share with you, I drove a school bus. When I was in high school, the school systems operated with student drivers. There were very few adults driving school buses. All the school buses were driven by students. Because it was cheap, we were paid, I can't remember what I was paid, it wasn't very much. But when I get to Leesburg, there was no Catoctin Circle to get on and come around to the school. I'd have to drive the school bus all the way up into town to the first light on the corner where it used to be White's department store on the corner. Make my right and come down through town. I had to make that sharp turn with the bus up in town. Then they put Catoctin Circle. And another thing, I lived over just outside of Middleburg, outside the community of St. Louis. So I'd get up in the morning, I'd start my bus ride about 7:30. So it would be about an hour and a half. I'd leave home at 7:30, I'd get here about 9. I'd leave home, go through St. Louis, up to another little settlement called Willisville, turn around, come through Middleburg, Aldi, Gilbert's Corner, into Leesburg. And back in those days, due to the fact that we were student drivers, they had governors on the buses. You could only drive 35 miles an hour. You couldn't go any faster. So it was can you imagine driving 35 miles an hour all the way from over there, the other side of Middleburg, around, all the way Route 50 to 15 into Leesburg, 35 miles an hour. You know, you just riding along and humming, you know. But that's the way it was. An hour and a half in the morning, about an hour and a half in the evening going back, get up the next morning and do it all over again. But there were all of us were student drivers. And I don't think we have any student, I think they got away from that, all adult drivers now.
Can any of you imagine driving students right now? That's crazy.
It was loud then. Oh, the buses, you could hear them coming. You ever know it? Hey, shut up. Oh, you don't shut up, you know. I mean, it was loud. It was loud.
So did you have to pass? What do you have to pass to become a student driver?
They had a driving test. They would put you on a bus. They had an instructor. Just like you have a driving instructor now, they would have a driving instructor for school buses, you know. Or they'd have somebody that count, I don't know who it was somebody connected to the school system. And the guy would sit at the seat and you just drive. He said, drive. And you just drive all over the place. You go here, you go there, you take you out, drive. Back it up. Can you back up? What's behind you? You know, you have to back up, you do this, you do that, you pull the handle, turn your lights on, you know, you have to make sure you can stop traffic. And once you finish that, you would take a test. I think you had to go to the DMV and prove to them that you could drive it. And then they would stamp your driver's license, school bus driver. And they say, okay, you're on, they give you a route. I drove bus 16.
Was it the same size bus as now?
Oh, no, well,
Smaller?
the buses then were a little smaller. They were, no, these buses y'all have now are humongous. They're long. The bus I drove 16 was an old 1950 Chevrolet, 6-cylinder creeper, 35 miles an hour, you know. And every hill you'd hit, every time you'd start up grade, you run at 35, which is slow. And every time you start up an incline, it would slow down. And you'd have to shift it into another gear. And you'd be crawling up the hill, and the cars would be packing up behind you. You look back, there'd be a line of cars, and people tooting and beeping and cussing and just, you know, but that's the way it was. No, the buses there were, excuse me, nowhere near as large. These buses now, I don't know how these ladies handle them. I watch them, but they do a good job.
Any other questions for our guest? Okay. Nobody else?
Guys, are you not curious?
I know, you guys have been listening. It's so intense.
I think some of you thinking that old guy sitting up there is just putting me on.
So I have a question. I know back in the days, it certainly was different, and it's a different world today. And young people face different challenges today. Not that at any time there weren't challenges for young people, but it's different challenges. Do you have any advice for our young people?
I don't know what to tell you. Avoid temptation. Don't get sucked into things. Like I said earlier, keep your mind open and think for yourself, right? There are a lot, for example, you know, we know that there's a drug problem. There are drugs now, okay. When I was in high school and when I started college, the biggest thing was to drink a beer. You know, that was a no-no. You drank a beer? Oh man, you know, that's food. You know, there was nothing else out there that the kids were getting into. But now it's a whole different ballgame. I guess today a beer is like, what? A beer? You know, I got a few chuckles out of that, so you know what a beer is, right? Like Mr. Kavanaugh said, I like beer. I like beer.
All right. Well, I don't know if we have any other questions or not, but we greatly appreciate you spending time with us today.
I hope I've been able to help you a little bit in understanding. But
if in hindsight we come up with questions, would it be okay if we direct them via email?
Yeah, do that.
To you?
Send it to Ms. Robinson. She'll get it to me, and I'll try to answer it.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Okay.
And like my aunt said, I'd rather be here with you than over there with the old people.
I feel that way every day. Like a youngster, so. Okay. All right, so ambassadors, we do have a meeting in here on Thursday. If you haven't signed up for lunch, we'll make sure we double check and get a yes or no for everybody for Thursday's lunch.
Wait a minute.
Today is Thursday.
Oh,
Today is
Tuesday.
Thursday.
Sorry. Oh,
No,
but
Tuesday.
Monday.
Monday.
We have Dr. Robinson coming to give a tour of the school. But we're still going to meet on Tuesday. Are we still meeting on Tuesday?
I don't
For the cards and the program. So, I think we should still meet Tuesday. Okay, so we'll give you some more information about, we're going to meet at 10:30. We'll be called out of classes to come up to the cafe, to come to the lobby. Where Dr. Robinson is going to walk you guys and give you a tour of the school. Yes,
Okay,
Monday.
so guys, repeat, so everybody's on the same page and everybody knows what's gonna happen. On Monday, during first block at 10:30, we will have a tour by Dr. Robinson. When are we having a tour? Monday, where?
30.
At 10:30, okay, by Dr. Robinson. And you will learn what?
I don't know what.
More about Douglas. You will get a tour.